So we're going to expand a little bit deeper on metals. I feel like good metal shader is such an important thing that we're just going to keep talking about it. We went over the rusty metals and layering our shaders up a little bit, but I wanted to talk about the different types of metal, specifically the colored metals and how to get them. And in V-Ray 3.1, there's actually, or maybe V-Ray 3, I don't know. It's in 3 and 3.1, and I'm sure future versions as well. But it's going to be, and there's an implementation of something called Open Shading Language. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. Admittedly, because it's a newer feature in V-Ray, I am also new to it, so I apologize if some of the information is slightly off. I'm going to do my best to explain it because it is a really cool feature, and I want to make sure everybody has a really good, can start investigating it on their own. Okay, so we'll take our metal that we've got here. Just kind of letting that, I was just letting that metal just kind of cook while I was explaining that there. So I'm going to actually just redraw my render region right around our shader ball here. And let's go ahead and zoom that in. There we go. So on our shader, let's reorganize our viewer. Okay. So on this shader, you can see we've got our diffuse color and reflection color. And I've just got my texture that I'm using for this. Because this is a pretty glossy material, I have color in the diffuse. So if you want the dark areas of your environment to actually reflect black, you can see that I can lower this all the way. And if I lower that all the way, I will reflect nothing where there's nothing. So this is actually a really true metal. This is a metal with, only pure reflection. Generally, I will fake in a little bit of that diffuse amount, diffuse color, so that it doesn't reflect completely black, especially in something like a studio environment where I want it to feel like there is a little bit of texture to it. Physically, even though this material would be reflecting pure black right here, with something so soft, because of the way the microfacets, which are the little micro bumps on the surface, line up, it's actually probably not really accurate that it would have that much of a black reflection in that area. There would be all these little micro surface details, and it would probably end up with a general color across the surface. A really good example of that is like a brushed aluminum or something. All right, so let's make this shader gold. So I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate special. And in my duplicate, I want to make sure I have duplicate input graph, so that we just make a brand new shader here. And let's just map that. Here we go. So let's just call this gold material. And we will, let me open up a new node editor. And anywhere that galvanized is at, I instead want to apply my new gold material. Cool. So let me actually get this back over here. Let's go over to panel, node editor. There we go, sweet. So this should, so those pieces are now all mapped to my gold. The main thing that we're going to need to be doing here is changing the color of the reflection color. So I'm going to select this texture that I have going in here, and I'm just going to go to my effects. I'm going to insert my color remap, same old thing we've been doing this whole time. And let me get this mapped in here. And let me try refreshing my IPR, because I didn't think that would go totally black. Yeah, there we go. If you ever feel like something totally feels weird in your IPR, just redo it. Never hurts anything. So I'm going to change this from white, and I'm just going to straight up make it yellow. And immediately, this is a pretty terrible color yellow, but you can immediately see where we're going with this, where it will tint that color of this metal. So I'm going to bump up the Fresnel a little bit here, because gold is pretty bright. And now I just need to dial this reflection color So for gold, we're going to inch it a little bit towards orange. That might be a little too much. We'll desaturate it a bit. That's actually feeling not bad. It may need to do a little bit less, maybe a little bit more red, or sorry, a little bit more yellow. And I just like to nudge this around until I'm happy with it while I'm looking at an IPR. So that's feeling pretty good, nice and rich. And you can also, if I wanted to, I could lift this up so that these areas where it was tarnished aren't so dark. Gold itself really doesn't get damaged. Gold itself just gets dirty. So you can almost, I believe, always clean gold, which is a pretty nice, pretty cool thing. So that's feeling pretty nice. And we can also get a little bit of a bump map in here. So let's go ahead and map in. I've got this hammered texture. Cool. So, and we'll start building this up. So this will be our colored metal shader. And I'm just going to set this to tangent space normal, and I'm going to tile this a whole bunch. Probably too much. We'll go down a little bit. Sweet, it's looking pretty cool. Definitely feels like hammered gold. You can always go in, and because I have this remap here, it's feeling just, I don't know, it's maybe a little too saturated. So we can desaturate that. So that feels pretty nice. So that's cool. So if we wanted to change this, I can go ahead and I can duplicate this. So again, we'll say duplicate special. And I'm just going to select those objects again. So that's our gold shader. I'm going to assign, actually, let me rename this. So let's make a copper. And let me select these objects and assign our new copper material. And let's graph this out. So for copper, exact same thing. It's just a slightly different color. So the copper is going to be much redder, almost kind of pink. So already that's feeling pretty cool, but you can see our dark spots we need to get adjusted. So this one we can do something kind of different for the copper, because copper has this really beautiful patina that's kind of this teal color, right? So let's get that, first let's get those darker areas feeling good so that they're the right color. And I can get that the same hue just by getting rid of that color and just bringing it down. And so this remap ramp here, I can use this as a layered shader. So I can go ahead and create a V-Ray blend. Now let's get that in there. Get our copper into there. And now let's go ahead and create a new V-Ray blend material. Oh, sorry. A regular V-Ray material. And this V-Ray material, I'm just going to have it be kind of tealish, kind of dark, something around in there. That color that you get in old copper. If you think like old copper statues, it could be kind of cool. And I could do a lot of stuff. So I could use that same texture that I've got up above, or I could just simply create like a solid fractal and, remap that. Actually, I could even reuse some of the stuff we already have. So let me open up my Hypershade here, because we were making some pretty cool procedural stuff already. And so like our rust, let's graph this. Close that create node. There we go. So we were messing around with our, let's see where it was at. So here's our grunge that we had. So that could be really great. So I'm just going to middle click drag that over. And I'm going to just drop that in to my blend amount, and then we'll put that shader in there. And there we go. So now we're starting to get a really beautiful patina across, like a kind of almost like the way copper doesn't really rust like a stainless, or not stainless steel, but like steel or metal would. Copper instead is going to get this color to it. So we can brighten that up a little bit too. So something around in there. Maybe a little too bright, so we can dial that down. And you get the idea. So that can be pretty cool. And we can do the same trick as before. We can create, oops, oh boy, screwing up everything here. I think I just did frame all. It's actually a pretty cool image. So let's V-Ray bump material. And I can now layer this up again. So I can drag in my V-Ray blend, and I can just connect that V-Ray bump material to my shading group. And I can use this same rust that I've got going on here. You can keep it pretty subtle. Even that's going to probably be too much. Yeah, it's totally too much. Remember, it's always easiest to go and do too much than it is too little. So that's pretty cool. And now, you know, I could even, I could bring in, maybe I want to just add in some curvature to this as well. So I can do a V-Ray curvature. And maybe on this remap here, let me actually just plug this in to a layered texture. And this is going to be my base. Let me create a new one here. And I hate this thing. So now we're just going to set this in our blend mode. We can do like a screen, something like that. Oh, right, this one doesn't have screen, but we can do an add, and we can see what we start getting here, and we'll save just in case. So let's see if we can drag in this guy and get some of that edge detailing via the curvature. Yep, super awesome. That's what I'm talking about. Really awesome stuff. Huge potential with this. You can really get some really beautiful effects. These precious metals are really interesting. You know, I can duplicate this connection here so that I don't want to mess up that other one that I've got. So now let's connect this in instead to our rust here, because I think that the way this is, because I have this texture dialed for the rust, it feels very harsh. So I can bring this back down a little bit, and I can really start dirtying this up. There we go. Pretty cool. Definitely slowing down. Right when I introduced that curvature map, everything slowed down quite a bit. So just so you know, that's a possibility. It's looking really cool though. And maybe I even want to bring some of this up. And I can try some different blend modes as well. And maybe let's do one quick full render on this guy. As it comes in, you can see it's feeling a little splotchy, so I definitely need to adjust that mask. But this file is going to be in there, so I'm going to leave this as is and just play around with, I want to show a brass shader, which is going to be kind of the base for some of the metals on the bird that we're going to be doing. So all of these colors too, just make sure you have good reference for what you're doing. It almost feels like it's been splattered with paint rather than actually wearing down. So I think the key here is going to be getting much more of this happening from the edge detail. So an actual painted map will help a lot with that. So we'll dial it a little bit more. So I don't want to leave it too ugly for everybody. And so maybe something around in there. And then this V-ray curvature as well, we can even spread that out a little bit more. So maybe we'll do like a 2.5. And now we'll go ahead and we could even toss it another. So we'll just see what that looks like. My light cache is coming in. It's obviously way, way, way too much. So let's get our IPR going again. Because I need to dial this way back. And so our curvature is too big. So let's try maybe 1.5. And then I definitely changed my remap ramp for the negative here. And let's bring that back in and clamp it back down. There we go. So now we're starting to get some of that copper showing back through. And, you know, maybe I could even get a little bit of this same grunge texture running through. So if I grab one of the grunge textures that I've got, so this is going to be file 41. Let's get that in here. We'll actually just connect that right into our shader. There we go. And now this guy, we can, again, insert color remap to get some color variance going through this. So we can have the dark end and then the light end. And we could even do maybe a little brighter spot in the middle and then something a little bit more desaturated. You know, you could adjust this however we wanted to. That's feeling pretty cool. And then we could use that same texture in our reflection color. And get some nice variance going through this. And so my copper is also very clean underneath of that. So, you know, maybe I could even run this exact same texture through the specular amount or something as well. But you can start seeing how nice it can be to just really start building up these shaders. It's really tons of fun. And, you know, creating these procedural shaders like this. It's feeling much better. I feel better about leaving this shader with you at this point. It's definitely pretty cool. You're starting to get the idea, I hope now. So let's graph this. And you can see to make this into a brass, I can just say duplicate special. And we will this time duplicate the whole input graph of that V-Ray bump material. And all those objects, I'm going to assign this now. And let's make this copper material into brass. And we'll rename this just brass shading group. Cool. So this reflected color, we're really going to be able to get away with, I assume just even changing it to the yellowy brassy color. So something with a little bit of warmth. So brass kind of falls between gold and copper. It's kind of this yellowy color, and it can be a little more saturated. We'll just click that down. So it's a little, something around in there. And then on the darker end, let's delete that, bring it down. We'll saturate a little bit more, darken it down, somewhere around in there. And now let's, on our patina, we could, let's pull up some, see what brass looks. Quick Google search, you can actually see this looks like copper on the end, and then we've got brass here, so it's a little bit more desaturated and a little darker. So we can do something kind of similar with this. So instead of that greenish color that happens on the brass, or sorry, on the copper, we can, maybe we can leave a little bit of that, but maybe we can just desaturate it a little bit more. And then in here, maybe that'll be even more desaturated. Maybe we can leave a little bit of green in the middle. We'll desaturate that a little bit more, maybe even bring it a little bluer. And we'll darken that down. And we'll try a smooth interpolate. And we'll just see what this looks like, and we'll get our IPR going here. And there you go. Looking pretty cool already. On this one, let's just adjust our ramp a little bit. Our remap ramp, we'll crunch that down a little bit. We'll bring a little bit more of that brass through underneath. There we go. And we could even go in and maybe on this one we can do 2 tiles on the grunge. Since I duplicated the whole shader here, I can adjust that. So we'll get a little bit more detail running through there. I actually don't like that. We'll go down to 0.75. Maybe we'll rotate it 90 degrees so it's a little bit different. And now we'll go ahead and do a full res render here and see what we're looking at. So that looks great. That was a huge success. So those 3 shaders are going to be saved out in this file. And next for our metal, what we're going to be doing in the next chapter is going over the open shading language implementation in V-Ray and creating some even more amazing metals.